Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our next installment of the Fiber Lookup series. Today, if you've already been here before, stay tuned because we have some new stuff that we've added. And that's the great thing about these calls. Every month there's a new addition, there's a new feature update, whether it be minor or major. The tool is constantly evolving and constantly getting better. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. Have two addresses that we'll look at today. One's going to be in a downtown, urban area where there's plenty of providers to select from. And our other example is going to be in a lesser kind of suburban area, more rural, and how the fiber lookup accomplishes to quote and price out both of these different types of addresses. So that way you guys get an idea of how effective fiber lookup is when quoting these types of scenarios. Before I get started, if you're new here, you've probably already heard me say this, but the fiber lookup is a proprietary tool. It's developed by ACS exclusively for our partners. And that's important to say just because, there's so many other fiber lookup copycats or just alternatives. But this tool was developed in-house by ACS developers. So all our partners are getting, the tool that's developed by ACS. And when searching an address, it's really easy. You can just copy and paste your address. The key thing when entering your address, though, just make sure you're selecting from the dropdown, right? If you hit OK too quickly, you might run into an error. So just make sure when you enter your selection, you see it populate on the list below. You select that. We're going to hit lookup. Now you're going to notice multiple things happening simultaneously here. On the left-hand side, this is going to be our location results broken up by the different uh, categories: shared providers, dedicated fiber providers, internet resellers. It's loading a little slower on my end just because I'm streaming, but on your end, this is going to populate 15 seconds max. And on the center screen right now, you're going to see the bird's eye view layout of the address we just entered. One other thing to note, as you see these spinning wheels, these are all direct APIs, right? Partners ask us all the time, hey, Sergio, how do you ensure the information we're seeing is accurate, it's up to date, it reflects the latest, promo pricing, all that jazz. The method in which we're able to keep fiber lookup so up to date is by having these direct API connections to these provider systems, right? So AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, all these different providers, as they update their own internal on-net list, their own internal pricing, the fiber lookup and the pricing pro will reflect that in real time. So every one of these lookups happens in real time. And now my map's loaded here. And guys, I promise when you load this on your end, it's going to take 10 seconds. I'm streaming over here, so my internet's a little slower today. Uh, the good news is once you've entered your address, it's indicated by this house here. And today we're looking at San Francisco area here in California. You'll notice all these different blue clusters, right? Depending on just really your preference, some partners like to see these blue clusters. You can select any one of these clusters and you'll see it'll pull up all the different provider availability in that section. If you wanted to see a more expanded view, all you have to do is select uncluster at the bottom left-hand side over here. And that's going to expand that selection. And now if I zoom in at the address I entered, you're going to notice there's these different provider logos on the building that I'm looking at. And here's a fun tip. If you hover over satellite, you can actually toggle on the labels. This comes from from the Google Maps. So if the company is registered with Google My Business, which 99% of companies are, you'll see them reflect on this map, right? This just gives you that extra assurance that, hey, this is the customer that you were looking at, this is the prospect. You can see some of the neighboring buildings are in front of the Wells Fargo. And it's just an extra feature that's available to you if needed. So now the next step is, all right, we're looking at the map. We see all these different provider logos. Your customer's looking for internet connectivity. What's the next step? The best next step in this scenario is to look over here on this left-hand side and to get the location results, right? If we look here by shared internet providers, we see Comcast Coax is on net. Dedicated fiber providers, Astound is on net. Zayo is on net. I see ACC is also here. I was just quoting them out. Um, the thing about APIs, sometimes we rely on providers to keep their systems up to date. We rely on providers to, maintain these connections. Sometimes the connections, if they're ever do miss, they'll usually be turned back up within a few hours. But this is a known issue that we've already addressed. So in this scenario, at least we have that second reliability where, hey, we recognize ACC is here. They are on net. This is an address we can get on net pricing for. Furthermore, dedicated internet resellers. For every address that you quote, you'll always see these dedicated internet resellers. AirSpring, Fusion, Nitel. These internet resellers are typically utilizing the last mile of one of these other providers that are here, right? Either an ACC or Zayo or Astound. However, sometimes because of their wholesale agreements can get more competitive pricing where if you were to go directly with the Zayo or Astound, right? And sometimes depending on your customer's clientele or their client base, sometimes these customers have multiple locations and these providers thrive on being able to consolidate 5, 10, 15 locations onto one single bill. So we like to include them just to give you those options. In addition to that, you'll always have access to these fixed wireless providers. Beyond Reach, we have their shared internet assets loaded here, in addition to their dedicated internet assets. Sail Internet. Sail Internet is a regional fiber provider. As indicated by this logo here, they can get up to 100 megs of dedicated internet. What's a regional fiber provider? A regional fiber provider is a fiber provider that typically only serves a specific city or region, right? Sometimes they can span across a state and sometimes multiple states, but they're not a national provider like you think of AT&T, where there might be in 20 plus states, right? They tend to cover a specific segment. Sail Internet primarily serves this Bay Area here in San Francisco. But what's great about ACS is that we have so many regional fiber providers for partners who are coming in here, entering their different addresses. They're going to have more options to quote because we have the most agreements, the most direct agreements with regional fiber providers across all the TSDs. So as you're entering these different addresses, you're going to see logos you may not recognize, provider names you may have not heard of, but ACS has agreements with them, has the availability to sell through them, and has their assets loaded onto this tool. That way our partners can get more options when it comes to their quotes. Lastly, here we have GeoLinks. They're also a regional fiber provider. I believe they span through California, maybe Nevada, maybe Oregon, but primarily their footprint's going to be in California, fixed wireless access there. And then for satellite internet, we have HughesNet. For every opportunity that you enter, you'll always see HughesNet. They're a satellite provider. Depending on your customer, if they're a more rural customer or they're looking for a failover circuit, that's really their best play. Before I move on, I just kind of want to go over some of the other things that you're seeing on your screen, right? If I scroll further down, you'll see some more additional information. For instance, telco name. This is the central. This is who the LEC is based on the address you've entered, right? We've already addressed this. This is AT&T. Cable provider. We know Comcast is on net, right? Let's say they weren't on net, but you wanted to know who's the cable provider in this area. This is based off zip code. So this is where this information comes from, but it's just going to give you that helpful insight to know who's the cable provider, who's the LEC in the area as you're beginning to quote this out. And there's also some other technical information like how far you are from the central office, and some other more technical stuff. If it's useful for our partners, we keep it there in the off chance that it might benefit as they continue to quote this out. Next, we can also toggle on all these different uh, connectivity types, right? If we wanted to see only the shared internet providers in the area, we could toggle that on. Clearly, this is Comcast territory. They're in abundance all around this territory. In addition to that, right? What if you weren't quoting what if you weren't quoting shared fiber or coax or dedicated internet? What if you were looking at something like data centers? You can toggle on data centers directly from this tool. All you got to do is hit that check mark and then just make sure you zoom out, right? Because these data centers are going to span across the United States. In addition, you'll also find these data centers well into Canada, right? So this is going to be Canada plus the United States data centers. Now it isn't a comprehensive list, but it's gonna cover most of your bases 9 times out of 10 as far as needing to know where a data center is, depending on what your client is looking for. We recently just added these Segra data centers over here in South Carolina and North Carolina regions, right? So we're constantly adding to this tool. So, I always encourage our partners, right? The tool evolves, day to day, week to week. So as you have these opportunities, if you have a prospect that you quoted 2 days ago and you're going to quote them again tomorrow, rerun that lookup, right? See what the new availability looks like, see if providers have updated their pricing, just rerun that quote. So now diving back into this location here, I'm going to toggle this on. I'm going to highlight one other feature before we dive into the Pricing Pro aspect, right, where we get the real-time pricing for this location. You'll notice here at the very bottom, it says fiber network. For many of these providers, we have their fiber assets, their fiber network pathways loaded to this tool. What that looks like is all you have to do is just click any one of these. If I select Crown Castle, give it about 5 seconds. It's going to load up these assets because sometimes these assets span across thousands of miles. And just a quick tip, you'll see here, it only shows one network at a time, and it shows the assets if they're anywhere in the state, right? So if you don't immediately see them in front of your screen, just zoom out and you'll get a better idea of where that network path is. And here it is loading up. You can see it spanning. It's going to continue to grow as the asset file loads up. It's just such a big file. And again, I'm streaming right now, so my speed's not best right now. But you'll see how that network path spans across California. In addition to that, you'll see how it spans near the address we've entered here. And I'll give this a quick second. You'll also notice some of these other fiber network pathways, right? Zayo, Astound, Paxio. What I'll do is actually toggle this one off, toggle Paxio on. Paxio is another regional fiber provider, and they also serve the Bay Area. However, they're on the other side of the bridge, right? This is San Francisco. This is that East Bay area. You can see how their network path is strictly just this East Bay area. You can kind of see where it stops and where it ends, maybe borderline San Jose area here. This is another great example of those regional fiber providers that we have loaded into this tool, right? Just to give partners extra insights, extra opportunities to see more provider options. So now that you've kind of assessed the address, you have an idea of the location results, you've looked at the network paths, we're ready to price this out, right? The customer's main request was, hey Todd, I need pricing. I want shared options and dedicated internet options for this location. So just to summarize very simply, the fiber lookup is the real-time availability tool. What we're going to jump into next is Pricing Pro, the real-time pricing tool. So this is two tools in one, right? You can see Pricing Pro logo here, Fiber Lookup logo here. This indicates when you're in the pricing section versus the availability section. And now we're going to be able to quote this address based off all these different product categories that are available to us. So again, depending on the customer's budget, depending on their ask, you can toggle any one of these on: dedicated internet, shared internet. You'll also notice there's SIP trunks, POTS replacements, plain old POTS. These are also available for our partners to quote depending on the customer's need. And we're continuously adding more product categories. In the future, you'll see things like UCAS, Unified Communications, Contact Center, things of that nature. So this tool is constantly evolving. We're really making it a one-stop shop for our partners. So now that we have our availability here, we can select the providers that we're looking to quote out. You can really select every single one of these providers if you wanted to. Maybe you know your client's the type of guy or gal who doesn't want to see 5 or 6 different options. They want a very simplified quote as you're presenting to them. So we'll keep this simple. We'll do AT&T, ACC Business, Sale Internet. They're the regional provider here. We'll do AirSpring as well. Shared internet options. We'll select AT&T and Sale Internet as well, right? For that shared fiber connection. What's great about being on this screen for the Pricing Pro is you can select all the different speeds that you desire, right? If the customer's indecisive or potentially might have a need to grow, they'll probably ask you to quote 50 megs and 400 meg or 500 meg or 100 meg. So depending on how you want to approach this, you can select different bandwidths here. In addition to that, you can select different pricing terms. If you want to see the price differential between a 2-year term and a 3-year term, you can accomplish that here as well. To keep things consistent and across the board, I'm going to do 50 meg, 3-year term, without router. I'm going to do 0 IPs, and I'm going to keep this consistent across the board. That way, as I'm presenting this to the customer, it's going to be apples to apples. Dedicated internet, we'll start here at 100. Select term, 3-year term. Now we're at shared internet. We'll do the 1 gig month to month. We'll do the 1 gig here, and we'll do, let's see, the 3-year term. So now I'm going to hit, oh, before I move forward, very key for our partners, as you're pricing out your locations, be sure to name your RFQs, right? Enter RFQ name. Be sure to name them, because what's nice about the FiberLookup, it functions like a mini CRM where you're going to be able to search and filter by the stage of the opportunity, search and filter by the name, by the address or the company name. So just name it something that you'll be able to reference later. Let's say this is for Tech Industries LLC. I'll label it as such. I'm going to hit run pricing. And immediately you'll notice some pricing comes back right away. Some pricing is still loading. And I just want to echo this for partners who might have just joined this call. How does ACS ensure that the pricing here is accurate? How does ACS ensure that the pricing here is the latest and most up to date? Direct API access. We connect to these provider systems directly. We're not referencing lists. We're not referencing a table. We're referencing these are the direct systems that these providers themselves are utilizing. The pricing that's going to populate here would be no different than the pricing if you were to go directly to Sale or AT&T or AirSpring. Think about the efficiency of being able to see all these different provider pricing here for dedicated internet, shared internet options, and the time saving. Instead of having to send 5, 6 different emails, being able to, I know we've kind of taken our time, especially me, I've taken my time looking at everything. But once you get really efficient with the FiberLookup and Pricing Pro, you're crunching these out in 2 to 3 minutes. You're typing in the address, you're reading through the different product categories, you're jumping over to Pricing Pro, you already know your speeds, you're jumping to this screen here, you're going to be so efficient because it's so user friendly, and it's going to allow you to do more and allow you just to look back at some past prospects and say, hey, I lost this opportunity. Let me see what the fiber lookup would have shown me because there's more regional fiber providers. It thrives in rural locations and has all the availability for those downtown, busy urban streets as well. Back to the opportunity, right? So now we're looking at the pricing. You have options here. You can simplify the pricing in front of you if you don't want to overwhelm your customer, if they want to just make a decision from one to two different providers. You can actually delete any one of these pricings, right? If you're looking at this one here, it's 444. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, that's going to be out of the customer's budget. I don't even want to include it. I don't want to confuse them. You can opt out to delete it. Quick note, you see all these little eye icons. These are information icons. I overlook this looking at the fiber lookup, but I encourage our partners anytime they have a question about any one of these statuses, just select the little information icon. On net, Comcast is available to the building, and these information icons vary, right? So near net, you might know what near net means, but if you go somewhere where with like beyond reach and you select near net, it's a different definition for how they recognize near net, right? Near net for beyond reach, the fixed wireless provider. That means that with 70% certainty, they're able to deliver service to the address, right? So the takeaway there is just take notice of the different information icons. It's going to give you helpful information as you relay this to the customer. And again, the pricing here is this whole RFQ dashboard is designed for you to, one, interpret it, but also in turn send it off to your customers, right? So this is presented to. So here you'll enter your customer's name, Tech Industries. This is my customer's name. This is Steve Smith, my fictional person. He's the president. Have this big quote. This is a new office for him. So here I am setting this up. And the reason we have all these different details is that, and I'll show you in just a second, is that when you send the RFQ to the customer, you want them to recognize that this is a tailored quote for them and the address that they've asked to quote. And you'll see what that looks like in just a sec. And what's super key, the email that you enter here is the email that will receive the RFQ breakdown, right? So if you're satisfied with what's on your screen here, all you have to do is save an email pricing text, and it's going to send an email to the address you've entered here. And I did this a little earlier just to save time. This is an example of the email that will be sent to the customer based off what we just did there here. Here I have Earthlink. I did this a little earlier, so I was able to select, I selected a different option. But this still captures what the customer is going to see from their perspective, right? On the top right-hand corner, that's going to be your information, right? Our partners, this is going to be your information. When you go to, let me open up that RFQ. On this right-hand side, all this information is customizable. Under the profile section, you can change your picture, you can change your logo. That way, as you're sending these off to customers, they have your information handy, right? And then remember when I mentioned to be sure to name your opportunities, that's where that opportunity name comes here, right? You want to name this something where if you were to send it off to the customer, it's going to be appropriate and it's going to be something that they'll recognize. So now this is the email that Steve Smith is receiving. He says, hey, this is my company. Sergio, that's my guy. Dedicated internet options. He's looking through this and he's seeing the total cost. There's installation costs, right? That's going to impact their decision making, and the shared internet cost. So now we've made it really simple for them to make a decision. And what's great is the moment that your customer opens up their email, our partners are going to get notified instantly in real time with a message from the fiber lookup. It's going to come via an email and it's going to say, hey, Sergio, your customer, Steve Smith, is now viewing the RFQ that you've created for them. right? So if you want to give them a call, send them a text, it's going to be a very opportune time for you to check in with Steve and say, "Hey, Steve, I was just thinking about you. Have you had a chance to review that RFQ?" Steve's going to say, "Yeah, how'd you know? I was just looking at it." That's just one of the great things we have going on with the Pricing Pro and those automatic emails. Furthermore, if you don't want to send your customer a pricing text, right? Because they get a bunch of emails, it's just going to slip through the cracks. You want to send them something more interactive. You can send them an email RFQ to customer. What that's going to do is send your customers an RFQ link. I'm just going to select that. It's going to pre-populate this message. You can review the RFQ from this link. It's going to pre-populate a greeting which says, "Hello, Steve." So all you'll put in the body is, "Please see below. Let me know if you have any questions." Once you hit send, the customer is going to get an email that says, "Hello, Steve. Please see below. Let me know if you have any questions." You can review the RFQ from this link. Where does that link take them? To something like this, right? Instead of the pricing text, you can email your customers an RFQ link where they can filter by the different product categories, right? Maybe you have SIP trunks and pots and some of those other product categories that we looked at. They can also view the notes for some of these providers. AirSpring is using AT&T as the access provider for speed at this location. But the best part of sending them the RFQ link here is that they can request order. What does that look like, right? If I'm the customer and I'm looking at this because my agent or my partner, my technology advisor has just sent this to me, I'm looking at the pricing, I say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to go with AT&T. I'm just all about cost efficiency here. Even though cell internet looks really competitive here, 249. Let's just say they go with AT&T. They hit request order. That has turned to accept. What's happening? Our partners are going to get an email that says, "Hey, Sergio. Hey, John. Hey, Todd. Your customer, Steve, has just accepted the 50 meg for 390 with AT&T Business." Now you've gotten the quote unquote verbal that this is the pricing your customer wants. And now you can work with your ACS channel manager to generate the contracts, get the customer's information, and get the order placed. In the near future, and we're still in beta, in the near future, and I believe we're starting off with AT&T shared fiber, partners are going to have the ability to hit when the customer hits accept. It's not going to stop there. A new window is going to open up where they're going to be able to enter their information and be able to produce and generate the contract right from this tool, right? That way there is no, it saves that step of, hey, Steve, we got this. We're generating the agreement. We'll get back to you in 20 minutes. It saves that extra step where it accomplishes that from the tool. The customer is going to be able to fill out their information, finalize the agreement right directly from the Pricing Pro RFQ dashboard. And that is just going to be such a game changer. And we're still beta testing it. I've had the privilege of already looking at it. It's going to be so seamless and just really effective on getting those customers to that next step a lot quicker. Now now that we've looked at this address, and this was a really good address in the sense that there was plenty of providers to choose from. We had numerous options. You know, realistically, some of the addresses that we look at for our customers, sometimes there isn't going to be a lot of options to select from, right? So I want to show our partners how do we manage those opportunities where it feels like your customer's in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it's a very rural area. How does FiberLookup and Pricing Pro help accomplish the quoting aspect for some of these more difficult and hard to reach locations? So what that looks like is if we go back to FiberLookup, I'm going to generate a new lookup here. I have my address pre-populated. Again, we're going to select from this list Hit lookup. For our partners on the call, if there's any questions, very shortly, I'll be able to address them. Feel free to type your questions into the Teams chat, and I'll be happy to answer those questions after this call, right? Any questions as far as the Fiber Lookup, PricingPro, access, its capabilities, I'll be able to address those, no problem. So again, I'll just give this a quick second to load up. There we are. Let me zoom out just to really give you guys a perspective of where we are. We are in Indiana. Let me hit uncluster here. Let me zoom out. You can kind of see downtown, maybe not even downtown, just the more suburban areas south of the address that we've entered, right? And for some of our partners, a lot of their clients are going to be in the suburbs, in rural areas, off the beaten path. So there needs to be an effective way to quote these different locations. Again, the house is going to indicate the address we entered. And what are the chances, right? This is really off this almost like a highway. You see these different provider options. You see Windstream, you see Zayo, you also see Everstream. Who's Everstream? Everstream is a regional fiber provider in the Northwest near that Atlantic. They cover about 5 to 6 different states. And they're just another prime example of a regional fiber provider that we have loaded onto our tool, right? There's been so many times where partners have brought in opportunities that they might have lost in the past or opportunities that they didn't win, and only to look into the fiber lookup, see that there was these other options that they didn't even know about, right? So I encourage all our partners, right? Anytime you get an opportunity for internet, plug it into the fiber lookup. You're going to be astounded by all the different provider options and even the provider options that you probably weren't anticipating. So here we have Everstream that's available, and then we'd be able to move forward with that and quote them. And how I mentioned earlier, we were talking about Beyond Reach. Beyond Reach is one of those providers that you'll see for every address that you enter, and it's in the name. They thrive on opportunities where the typical customer is beyond reach. Very clever, because they thrive in providing services to these customers in these rural areas. So again, rural customers, downtown customers, suburbs, for all your customer and prospects opportunities, run them through the fiber lookup. Be impressed at how fast you're going to be able to see all the different provider options, get the breakdown of the location results depending on the customer's need, depending on their budget, and then being able to not just end the conversation there for your customer and tell them, hey, yeah, these 3 guys are available. Utilize PricingPro, get the real-time pricing for these locations, and then also take it a step further and tell your customer, hey, I'm going to send you the pricing for these locations, and I just need you to tell me what you're looking for, what you want to check off, which agreements you want us to generate. And the best part is you're also backed by our amazing dedicated teams. Every partner has a dedicated ACS team comprised of a channel manager, a partner success manager like myself, a marketing manager, and a commissions manager. So every partner has somebody that they can go to. And I missed one, a support manager, right? So every one of our partners has contacts, has real people that they can reach out to get additional support. If you don't know who's part of your team, just go to your ACS portal and you'll see it on the homepage. You'll see the logos with their contact information, the headshots. You'll see who's a part of your dedicated team, and you'll be able to learn more about their responsibilities and how they support you. Right? Some of our partners stay really busy. Feel free to lean on your channel manager and your support manager to help you with these quotes. Our guys are experts. They can run this. We can do this in our sleep, right? This tool is available for our partners to use, but we are also here available to support you and also help you with these quotes. Run these quotes, run the different pricing opportunities. We want you to succeed, and we're here for you. So with that being said, I'll take a moment to see if there's any questions that have come up. But really the main takeaway is, if you don't have access to the fiber lookup, make sure you get access. If you are not currently an ACS partner, we're going to send an email to everybody on this call. There's going to be a section that says, if you're not an ACS partner, how to sign up so that we can get you access to this tool, because I guarantee it's going to enhance your sales process. It's going to make things more efficient, and it's going to be a game changer. So with that being said, I'm going to pull up my teams. Let's see if there's any questions from the chat. Deal asks, what is the difference between the cost, speed, cost, install cost, total costs? Looks like all the same. Let me pull up what we just looked at. Let me interpret kind of line by line what we're looking at. And I see his angle, right? It looks like I can see where some of the numbers look like they're the same. What's nice is we've broken this down by column name for each section, right? So this is the speed cost. This is strictly the cost of the speed that we're quoting out, 50 meg. The reason that's here is, and the reason why, it looks identical to the total cost is that sometimes, depending on the customer's need, we'll add static IPs or a router, right? So let's say the router is $49 a month. Let's say static IPs, maybe they want 11 or 21 static IPs. That's going to be an extra 150 a month. The speed cost at least indicates to the customer and also to our partners, hey, this is the cost strictly for the speed that we're quoting out. The total cost is going to include the router and the static IPs, right? That way there's just full transparency of that breakdown. In addition to that, there's an install cost. So it's not included in the total cost because depending on the opportunity, depending on how when you're working with the your channel manager, sometimes we can leverage the relationships we have with these providers. We can sweet talk them into waiving off some of these install costs. We keep them there because that is their standard install cost produced depending on the address and depending on the speed that we've coded out. However, it's separated because it can change. But in general, speed cost is strictly the speed cost. Total cost is going to include the static IPs and that router cost. And that might be what you saw initially, right? You might have seen these columns identical, and I can see how that could have been confusing, but hopefully that helps clear that up. Excellent. All right, so that looked to be the last question. We'll be sure to give this recording to all our partners after this call, either later today or maybe top of tomorrow morning. I just want to thank everybody who joined us here today for being here, and hopefully you took something valuable away from the Fiber Lookup and the Pricing Pro in this demo. Next month, we're going to be back at it again, and there's going to be something else to uncover, right? The amount of updates, the amount of feature updates, the amount of enhancements that happen on a month-to-month basis, it's incredible. So stay tuned. Be sure to continue to step into these calls. Invite your sales rep, invite your team, because there's going to be a lot available, a lot of value that they're going to be able to take away. That being said, thank you everyone. Have a great rest of your days.